Okay. Hi, Batamira. Good. Hi, Chaiki. You see her, know me. Nice. All right, so we'll get started. Now, this is the last session of this part of the class. I think we're having a break, but I'm not sure how long it's going to be. I don't know if they're going to break until after Pesach or if it's just a quick one and then we're going to go until Pesach. I'm not sure exactly what the plan is, so I'll wait to hear further news. And when you know, I know, and when I know, you know. But for our part one, this is our last session, which takes us into chapter 77. Now, we've done 16, 2, 41, 42, 59, and now we're up to 77. So we're past the halfway mark. We're past the halfway mark of Tikkun HaKlali because there are 10 chapters, and now we're number 6. And we're going to have however long a break that we're being provided with until we pick up again. So it doesn't mean you should not say Tikkun HaKlali. It just means that we'll be picking up again when we pick up, and until that time, you just keep on going based on whatever we've learned until now. So chapter 77. We are, let's see. So let me get, first let's open up. What we usually do is to see what's the signal, right? So in Rabbi Nachman's Likutei Moharan, again, Tzadik Bet, lesson number 92, is one of the main sources that talks about Tikkun HaKlali. And we have our little hints. So once we get past a certain point, he tells us what the chapters are, and he tells us the hint. Here's the hint, Nigun, in chapter 77. The spiritual expression is called Nigun, and the phrase in the chapter is Ezkira Niginati Balayla. That's well into the chapter. So it's not a introductory term like Nitzuach or Halel or something like that. Instead, it comes somewhat towards the middle of the chapter, and we'll have to see what it's meant or what it's indicating there. Now, Nigun means melody. It doesn't mean melody with words. It just means melody, raw music. And the phrase in the chapter is Ezkira Niginati Balayla. During the night times, I remember my Nigun. This is not David HaMelech, right? This is Asaf. This is a Asaf. And so even though David HaMelech's midnight melodies are very familiar to us, or should be, because in the middle of the night David HaMelech would wake up, because it says in the Gemara in Brachot that the north wind would play against the strings of the harp that was over his bed. It would play across those strings, and to that music he would wake up. Chatzot laila kum lahodot lach al mishpatei tzidkecha, like it says in chapter 119, I'll wake up at midnight, I arise at midnight to thank Shem for your mishpatei tzidkecha, your righteous statutes. And we know that David HaMelech's schedule was to arise at, slept a very little, he didn't sleep long during the first half of the night. He would sleep a bit, and then the Ruach Tzfonit, that northern wind, which does have relevance to our chapter, even though the author of this actual psalm is Asaph and not David, although David is the redactor. We understand that the night is representative of the difficult times. And when it says that the Ruach Tzfonit would blow across and make music, blow across the harp of David and make music, the idea of the Ruach Tzfonit is also, it's not just that it's the middle of the night, but even the northern wind is representative of the harshest of the harsh. It comes from the darkest place, like of all your directionals. The dark and cold side is the northern side. And so, and it's safun, it's in the language of the thing that's hidden, because it's the dark place, but it's representative in our deeper sources. The northern side is mitzafon tiftach ra'a, like it says in Tzefania, that evil comes bursting forth from the north. So the idea is that it's from the dark place that somehow this wind blows out and arouses David HaMelech to sing and to study. And we know that his schedule was that he woke up at night and he would pray and learn throughout the night. And then as the dawn approached, he would prepare for prayer, pray in the morning with the sunrise, which was the old Jewish schedule and for many people still is, and start his day. And his day then went on to be adjudicating cases for the Jewish people and giving advice and being the leader of the Jewish people. So he had his divine service, we'll say, his exclusive divine service was something that he offered from midnight until the morning. And then once the morning came, he was on duty for the Jewish people, also doing divine service, but in a different capacity. So the nighttime is a powerful time. Rabbi Nachman speaks about it in a number of places, and we'll hopefully do a little bit from Likutei Moharan and Likutei Halachot today, provided that we can, because we also have to cover the actual verses. And for those who feel, I just want to, I ran into somebody, or not ran into her, but we had the opportunity to talk, someone who's been participating in these classes, and she said she has to listen to them twice because I go through the verses so quickly. And she wasn't complaining, and I just want to say that for anybody, if it seems like I'm running through them quickly, there's no harm done in going through the class again. I feel a great responsibility to make sure that every word of the chapter is covered, some of the longer ones, some of the shorter ones. It's not always easy to cover in an hour. We need a lot of divine help to make sure that it's all taken care of. So I'm doing my best. If you find that I'm going too quickly or that you're not familiar with the chapter, it might be better to have a printed copy or a Tehillim in which you can take little notes as you go in pencil or something like that, so that you have, so that it's easier to remember when you're actually saying the verses, and also to familiarize yourself with the English at least ahead of time, so that it's when I go into some more of the niceties of the grammar or the Hebrew, that you should at least have good familiarity with the words. So just putting that out there. Now, nigun. So let's go back. Is kirani ginati balayla, right? I recall my melody at night, and the nighttime melody, even though we associate it very profoundly with David HaMelech, we see that Asaf is also in this chapter speaking in these terms, because really the idea of the awake of melody or of spiritual song, which is both consolation and redemptive, out of the place of the darkness of the night. This is a very big theme in Breslov, that the time of Hitbodedut and to focus on prayer and getting up for Chatzot, getting up at midnight, in order to pour our hearts out before Hashem over all that we've lost and hope to regain. So even if this is not an avoda, this is not an act of divine service, it's necessarily for women, there are different approaches as to whether women should get up Chatzot. I'm not going to go there. We've spoken about it in prior courses. If anybody wants to go back, I'm sure that I dealt with it some other time in some other class. So the basic is that there's a range of opinions about women and Chatzot, about women and the midnight or middle of the night avoda. And whatever you do, you're in perfectly good company, because it runs the gamut from, Tavo Aleha Bracha, and you can say from the organized Tikkun Chatzot, from the special prayers at from midnight, if anybody's not familiar with what I'm talking about. So BRI did a very nice little book called The Sweetest Hour, if you want to understand it better. So there's, you have a range about women going from, if you feel like saying some of those prayers or all of them, Tavo Aleha Bracha, it's perfectly acceptable and praiseworthy, all the way to, neutral, and then the furthest end of the spectrum, which is, this is not an avoda for women. It's not really something that women ought to do in terms of the prayers. But even the Ben Ish Chai does say that, that the holy women of Baghdad used to get up to do their housework in the middle of the night. It means that in this state of exile, which is really what this chapter is about, there's a powerful remedy spiritually in breaking through the hard, like the thick of it, the middle of the night, is like to break out from that and muster up our inner resources of turning that into melodic, like a kind of melody of yearning before Hashem. That's the remedy for the ills of the night, which is the ill of exile. So when it says as Kirani Ginati Balayla, it's not just about reminiscing, even though this chapter is very focused on reminiscing. We have to see that it can't be a reminiscing that's just lamenting, because that's not called nigun, that's called kina. Now, even though kina, lamentation, has its place, and there is something of kina here, we're going to see that there's a transformation in the course of this chapter, from lament, from kina, what Rabbi Nachman says, from kinot to tikkun. The same letters are in the words kinot, which are lamentations, like we say on Tisha B'Av, and tikkun, which means repair. So there's a turnover. We'll see in the chapter. It kind of flips its mode from a kind of lamenting song into a genuine nigun, which is healing. So that's really our and we know that the nigun has other antecedents, because, like it says, "V'nagen haminagen," Shaul HaMelech, King Shaul, when he had the fits of despair upon him, so he would summon David HaMelech to come and play for him and pull him out of his depression, his deep, what do you want to call it, like kind of this low dysphoria, kind of deep despair. So he would summon David to come and play for him, because when the music played, would lift his spirit. And that's true for everybody. So we see it's not only a question of only like having the music play for us, but actually playing ourselves and making ourselves into the music. And that's really what the chapter is about. Now, as we have been doing, even though Rabbi Nachman gave us the little hint of here's the verse or the phrase that's encapsulates the spiritual song mode of this particular chapter, if we go down to the Parparot L'Chochma, which we keep on referring back to, he gives us a little bit more of a clue, and he says, Ulinyan nigun, when it comes to the spiritual quality of nigun, ne'emar, in our chapter 77, we find the words, as kirani ginati balayla, as I mentioned, I will recall my melody, or my singing of my melody at night. Nimtza, here's the addition of it's only an extra 5 words, but it's pretty important. Nimtza shene'emar nigun eitzel laila. Now, what on earth has he added here? We find that nigun, in this phrase, that's the phrase from our chapter, which is meant to encapsulate its spiritual song quality, nigun is meant to counterbalance this thing called laila. Now, we know, and even though, some women are more connecting with this incest, but I have to say it because that's the intent here of the Parparot L'Chochma, is that in some way every spiritual song mode has to be reparative for the ailments of sexual impurity. And so the idea of Laila, right? Now the association is pretty obvious, because I'm not going to get into like the physiology of it, but I will say that we understand, all of us, that when you're sleeping, your conscious mind, which hopefully has more spiritual consciousness, is kind of guiding, or hopefully guiding, your thoughts through the course of the day. But when you go to sleep, you have a suspension of, which is called histalkut hamochin. Your conscious mind is suspended, and we'll talk about this a little further on. That's a time of pkudat haruchot. It means like your soul gets a kind of refreshing dip in unencumbered contact with its source. At the same time, there's a kind of judgment going on, because your soul has an opportunity to be somewhat more liberated from the shackles of the body, and it needs to go through its daily judgment. So that happens at night. But really what happens to the body is nebuch on the body. The body is kind of left without higher spiritual consciousness manifest well in it. And so what takes over is the medame. Your imaginative faculty takes over. And so we dream, we sleep and we dream. And we don't have much control over dreams. And even lucid dreamers, who are few and far between, but even they don't have real control, super control over it. Sometimes it comes and goes. And so for the most part, we understand that the dream state, or the sleep state, or the night state is one where the less evolved spiritually, the less spiritually evolved part of the self tends to have sway. How this manifests itself physically is that it's considered to be halachically a more vulnerable time. Men are more vulnerable to the Mikra Laila, which is discussed here. And I would have to say again, women are not entirely invulnerable to this, because we all are vulnerable also to subconscious and unconscious stirrings that manifest themselves as dreams, which, as I've mentioned, the Ben Ish Chai, based on the Arizal, he gives it a lot of weight, so it's not like you're off the hook. And aside from that, we really understand that there's vulnerability there, even just from the name Laila. So the klipa, which we've spoken about before, that's most associated with sexual impurity, is called, I'm not even supposed to say the name, but I'm going to say it because I'm teaching, Lilit. Now, Lilit is from the language of two phrases which are united together. One of them has to do with Laila, which means that in the time of suspended spiritual consciousness is when we're most vulnerable to that klipa, to that impurity. But furthermore, Lilit comes from the language of Yilala, and in Hebrew, Yilala means lamenting, mourning, lament. So the Yilala is like this kind of the bewailing, bemoaning, miserable self, the part of the self that is miserable. And so we know that we've spoken about this from the beginning, that the feeling of association from Hashem, or disconnectedness from ourselves, from other people, from God, that's really where, that's called the night phase of being. And it's where we are very vulnerable, when we're feeling alone, when we're feeling alienated, alienated, all this la la la, la 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 la, not the celebratory ululation, but what's done at funerals. That's really also called a yilala. Sorry if I broke anybody's ears over there. So, so this is part of our understanding of Laila also, is that it's not only more vulnerable time, but it's also like where people, it's the idea of the kind of negative space inside of ourselves where we feel detached and alone and afraid. And so the nigun, that's what the Parparot L'Chacham is telling us here. Nigun, right? Ne'emar nigun etzel laila. Eskira niginati balayla. That nigun is the means through which it's possible to pull ourselves out from the negative influence of what's called laila, of night. It's not that night is bad. The association with night is like it's dark. The klipot are, having a, they're having they come out in force, etc. So now it's time to get into our actual, into the actual language of the verses. The parak, the chapter is not super long and not also that difficult, and the language is in certain ways a little bit easier than earlier chapters, so hopefully we'll be able to go through quickly and also do some likutei lachot. Lamnatzeach al yidutun la'asaf mizmor. Well, I already told you that this chapter is la'asaf. It's Asaf was one of the composers or contributors towards Tehillim, and the Dat Sofrim tells us, if we want to understand a little bit better where he's coming from, Asaf tells us that the Dat Sofrim tells us that Asaf lived late in the period of the he lived in a period of time when the Jewish people were suffering very much under the thumb of the Plishtim, and because of that, even though we were not in exile, we were in exile. Because even if you're in your own land, if you are not able to express yourself spiritually fully, so it's an oppressive situation. And because of that, Asaf is also crying out about what has been lost. Now, Lamnatzeach al Yidutun, we've spoken about this Lamnatzeach before, and I think it was last week. So we have this, it's a prayer that's offered to the one who is Menatzeach, the one who grants us victory, right? Through the expression of our winning prayers, that's the idea of the Netzach, which have eternity, they're connected to eternity, and they're also well expressed, and that's from the language of Nusach, or Lanaseach, and means that they're poured out before Hashem. So I'm always, just whenever you see that Lamnatzeach, I got like five concepts all wrapped up into one, so we want to keep them in mind. Al Yidutun. Now, Al Yidutun, the implication, like if you're using an English translation. It might just say upon the Yedutun, which implies that it's some kind of an instrument. And sometimes we have confusion about the nature of the instrument because we are not familiar, we're not experts in all of the instruments that were used in the Beit HaMikdash because we've lost the tradition of many of them. We're not exactly sure what they looked like, what they sounded like, what type of instruments they were. So could it be that the Yedutun is an instrument and this is an indicator of what instrument this is supposed to be played on, or that the music accompaniment should be upon the instrument called Yedutun? It's possible. We have a few chapters that start off with a heading of Al Yedutun. Nevertheless, we have to be careful to make sure that we are not skipping over the implication within the words, meaning even if the Yedutun is a musical instrument, the Yedutun has the term Yedutun, which is, you see how it's written here, Yeditun with a Yud, but actually it's read as Yedutun with a Vav. So we have the Yedutun has a few different roots in it. We have the root that's the Yud and the Daled, which means the Yad. And we're going to see that the Yad, the concept of the hand, comes up a few times in the chapter. So when we talk about the hand, we're talking about the manifestation of providence, which is called the hand of God, Yedutun. So we're getting a clue right at the beginning that Asaph is very concerned with what's preoccupying him in this prayer, in this psalm, is the way that providence has worked out for the Jewish people and the stuff that's painful about it. And one of the reasons that we know that he's going to be talking about the stuff that's harsh in divine providence is because the other root that's here, not just the Yud Daled, but also, maybe I can make this a little bit bigger, not just the Yud Daled, but also the, not bigger than that, okay, is the Daled Taf. Now, if we take the Daled Taf, that root of Dat means law. So it means the straight and narrow, the thing you can't compromise with, the thing that is not negotiable. So when we combine together this idea of Yedutun, it means Yad Dat, which really implies the judging and somewhat harsh and inflexible hand of divine providence within the collective life of the Jewish people. Now, when we say this in TIKKUN HAKLALI, or when we say it just saying Tehillim, we don't only have to read it in terms of the history of the Jewish people and the expression of the Jewish people as a whole, but also for us personally. So we know already from verse 1, Asaph is singing a song, and he is singing it, right? It's a mizmor, which is a big comfort. It's a big consolation in Tehillim. How the things that are harshest and most difficult for us we have the good example of the psalmist, especially David, who were experts at transformation. They would transform their painful experiences into songs to Hashem. That's what psalms are. So we have that living example in front of us, and that's one of the reasons why the Jewish people are so attached to our Tehillim, because they really are they're not just prayers and they're not just sgulot, like kind of talismanic, people walk around with their Tehillim. It's like, even if they're not going to say it, they want to have it with them. But it's more than that. They're guidebooks to the process of transformation. We get to experience it together with the psalmist. Koli el Elokim ve'etzaka. Okay, so we start off and we know right away. I'm crying out, my voice goes out to Elokim, and as soon as we see the Elokim instead of Yudke Vavke, instead of Hashem, so we know that Asaph is talking about the harsh things, because Elokim implies the Midat Hadin, implies God's attribute of justice. Ve'etzaka, my voice goes out. It doesn't just go out in a song, it doesn't go out in a prayer, it goes out in a tza'aka. Now, a tza'aka is very interesting because the tza'aka means a crying or a scream that doesn't necessarily take an articulated form of words. It's just the cry that comes from pain. And we're going to see that the negina, right, neginati balayla, is also the melody without words, which is the flip side of the tza'aka, which is the cry without words. So, koli el Elokim ve'tza'aka. I'm speaking now about the fact that when I'm in my deepest place of pain, I call out to Hashem. I just cry out to Him. I don't even have the words to articulate how what exactly I'm suffering from, but He knows. Koli Elokim, my voice to Hashem, to God, but Elokim again. I'm calling out to them, like to Hashem, who is manifesting in my life, Yidutun, the hand of judgment. And nevertheless, I still appeal to Him, which we always are coming back to. Gam ki yiktaleni l'chai yachel, like Eov said, even if you kill me, I'm still going back to you, like the child who gets punished by the mother, and then he runs back to his mother for a hug, for consolation, for comfort, even though she's the one who punished him in the first place. So we have this idea of Kolir Elokim, and what? V'ha'azin elai. And He listens to me. Now, V'ha'azin is a very interesting word because it doesn't mean V'ata ta'azin elai, V'hu ma'azin elai, or V'hu ya'azin elai. For those who know Hebrew, I just played around with variations on the verb, and you will hear me, and he does hear me, and he will hear me. I just gave 3 different variations in Hebrew, and none of those are the ha'azin elai. Ha'azin is like a blank infinitive, like leha'azin, to listen. It's like and listen, and he listens, but it's not even and he listens. It's more than that. It's like he has listened, he will, he does listen, right? It's just open-ended infinitive, absolute. So ha'azin is from the language of the ozen. It means it goes in. Here I am in my place of night, in my place of suffering. I call out to Hashem. I'm still in the place of suffering. And even if I'm not answered yet, and that's really what he's talking about, I'm still in the place of pain. Nevertheless, ha'azin elai. Why am I calling out to Him? I call out to Him because I know that He is listening. I may not get the answer that I want right away. I may not feel like I'm being yet responded to, but I know He's listening. Now that's the beginning of everything, because the Rabbi Nachman spoke about this in a lesson called Aye, which is known as Aye, where he talks about what happens when a person is in a state where he really is in a state of such hastara, he's in a state of such concealment that he's not able to see Hashem in that place. And what does he call out? He calls out Aye Mekom Kavodo. Aye. Where is he? Now, as we get closer to Purim, actually, this is it's relevant. So I'm going to mention it now, because we don't have another class before Purim, I don't think. So we have here the opening verse of chapter 2 is also very similar intent. We have Lamnatzeach Halayelet HaShachar, which is the traditional chapter to say on Ta'anit Ter and also on Purim itself. Lamnatzeach Halayelet HaShachar, it's a song Halayelet HaShachar, and it's a reference to Esther. Now, we say that David HaMelech was having a vision of Esther prophetically, and it also spoke to his own situation. And the very opening of it is Keli, Keli, lama zaftani. My God, why have you abandoned me? Now, one of the mysteries of that verse is, if He's abandoned you, then why are you calling out to Him? The fact that we call out is proof positive that on some level we do know that He's present, but we're still in a state of concealment, and so we are not carrying an expectation of being responded to immediately. We're still in the place of feeling abandoned, yet we are not so removed from our awareness of His overarching, absolute, pervasive presence that we've shut up completely. So we're in concealment, but we still cry out. Vazin elai. Keli, Keli, lama zaftani. It's like a nonsensical question. My God, why have you abandoned me? Why have you forsaken me? If He's forsaken you, then who are you talking to? Obviously, on some level, He's still in the room, so to speak. Otherwise, you have no one to talk to. So it's expressed here somewhat differently, but it's the same idea. Aye Mekom Kavodo. Where is the place of His glory? This is what a person says when he can't find God. Nevertheless, by asking where, what does he mean? Aye means Ayeka, where are you? So the question itself is already a kind of answer, which is helpful for us because we're in the state of crying out and calling out, where, what, do you hear me? We're already engaging, and that's something that's important. It's, as Reb Nosson says, it's like the way out. Which one? Keli, lama azavatani. Yeah. Bayom tsarasi. Hashem dorashti. Now, we have here a very interesting thing going on here with the trup. I'm somebody who pays attention to it. So, below the shem Adonai, right? It doesn't say Yud Ke Vav Ke. So it means my master, right? On the day of my tzara, so my tzara is like my tight place, right? Tzar means restricted. So on the day of my trouble, which is really a feeling of constriction, limitation. So I'm in a place that's limited. I sought out Darashti Adni, Adonai, my master. Now, you see how under the nun there, for those of you who pay attention, so we have a sign there called the etnachta, and it means it's a pause. And it's interesting that it's there because we actually would expect it to be here, below the tuff of Darashti. Now, above the Dalid, we have a different siman. We have another bit of trup, which actually kind of indicates that the word before it is attached to the Darashti. We have kind of conflicting messages there of both distance and closeness in the process of seeking Hashem while in pain, which I haven't seen this brought down any place, but I happen to be very attentive to the, I'm very attentive to the trup, to the marks for where the pauses are supposed to be. So because of that, even though we have lost our tradition of how to sing them, especially Ashkenazim, we don't really have any tradition left of how to sing these properly. We know that grammatically they're significant. So when we find that there's distance and closeness, meaning that two words are being brought together, but also something is indicating that they have to be separate, so we know that conceptually there's something going on there. Biyom tsarasi adni, it means to say, on the day of my trouble, what's being manifest there? Mastery. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is acting like Dan. He's the Dayan. He's being my judge. Nevertheless, Darashti, I'm still seeking him out. Yodi Laila Nigra. Now here's the hand. We had this Yidutun. And here I said the Yad is going to come up again. It's going to come up again and again. So we have here Yadi Laila Nigra. My hand, that means to say my power, right? Here I am, feeling distance from Hashem in a place of constriction where I feel so limited. And I still have to act and I still have to do. And my Yadayim are representative of my ability to act in the world. You have in your two hands, so you have here in each hand, you have 1, 2, 3. You're in terms of, we call these phalanges, for those who remember their anatomy, if they ever studied it. So you have, in terms of like distinct, separate articulations of the fingers. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Right. So altogether, each hand, each yad, which has a gematria 14, has 14, right, subdivisions of digits. And together, when you take yad and yad, 14 and 14, what do you have? You have koach, right? Koach, it's power, 28 in Hebrew. So your yadayim, your two hands, are representative of your ability to act in the world, to accomplish things in the world. And Asaf says, here I am in the night, right? During the day, Tsarati Adonai Darashti. I was suffering during the day. I sought out God, but I didn't get the answers that I wanted. I didn't get the help I needed. And came to night, which is the part, Yadi Laila Nigra. By the time we got to the night, my hands were melted away. That means this, my kochot, my strength was already ebbing. Velo tafug. And it didn't cease. It means to say this feeling of being depleted, my power is being depleted, just kept on going throughout the night. Me'ana hinachem nafshi. Where will my soul find comfort? So when Asaf says these words, and we say them in TIKKUN HAKLALI, like we're in the state of laila, of really feeling very acutely. It's an acute feeling of loss. And the idea is that we're in exile in this place of of night, whether it's the personal exile or the collective exile, it comes down to the same thing. And we haven't got koach. Like we need so much help, and we just haven't got it. And it feels like it's ebbing away, like it's flowing out. It just doesn't stop. Like the pipe is broken, and all of the pressure, all of the water and power that we need is just like it's flowing out of the system. Me'ani yinachem nafshi. Where am I supposed to get my comfort from? Eskira Elokim v'Hamaya. So he's looking for. This is like we imagine Asaf in his bed, right? And he feels at a loss, and he feels he's speaking our truth. He feels like I haven't got the energy to fix anything. I don't even know where to begin. Eskira Elokim v'Hamaya. I think about the way the Midat Hadin has been manifest. Jewish people, which is what he's talking about, right? We can say it for ourselves, but he means for the collectivity of the Jewish people. Vehemaya. Ehemaya means like I'm in a state of ferment from it. Like I'm so agitated. Asicha. I speak it out. I'm doing hitbodedut. I'm talking it out to myself, to Hashem. And it's like my spirit enshrouds me. I feel like I'm just like I'm wrapped. I'm wrapped in this kind of lament and mourning over a situation I don't have the power to change. And we're still in the suffering part, but it will get better. Don't worry. Because, right, these are not laments. It is a nigun. But it starts off a bit of a kina. Eskira Elokim ve'amaya asicha v'titatefu chisela. Here we are in Pasukei. Achasta shmot inai. It's an interesting phrase. It says, Hashem, you grabbed hold of my eyelids. Achasta. Like somebody will be lying open-eyed in the dark. You can't sleep. That's the image that we have. Like wide eyes open, beset by thoughts, beset by like brooding over the past, brooding over the present, worrying of the future, with our eyes staring wide open. Achas shmurot einai. These are called the shmurot einai, the eyelids, because they protect your eyes. That's from the language of Shmira. So those protective lids of my eyes, it's like you're holding them open, Hashem. Nif'amti. Nif'amti, hipa'em is from the language of pi'ima, like your heart is beating fast. Nif'amti, or it can mean like I'm feeling crushed, like a hammer. Sometimes the hammer blow is like boom, boom. So whether it's the feeling of the heart thudding in the chest or feeling crushed by too many troubles, the Lord the bear, I can't even speak. I'm so beset by this feeling of anxiety. Is describing a very severe state of anxiety. How does he heal himself from it? Because we know that Asaf must come to some method by which he's able to draw himself out of this very negative state. Chishavti yamin mikeden. Because I was so awake, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't rest at night, I felt so beset by my troubles. Instead of brooding over everything that's wrong, I decided to go back in my mind, because I'm thinking anyway, so instead of letting those thoughts like run amok, I'm going to harness my thoughts and go back to some place where I can draw strength from instead of feeling destroyed by. Chishavti yamin mikeden. I decided to go back and think about days that took place a long time ago, old days, ancient days. Shnot olamim, the years of forever, which really means, means like the years of ancient times. Eskira niginati balayla. And now instead of it being, I'm in a state of panic at night, I'm starting to immerse my thoughts in better places where I'm going back to the places where we were saved before, where I saw Hashem's hand in a helpful way in the history of the Jewish people or in my own life. And I'm choosing to place my thoughts there. And like Reb Nosson says, it's based on one of the lessons of Tim Moran. He speaks about the idea of borrowing from the past or borrowing from the future. This is actually something that it's a technique that people should know. When you're in a state now where you're really in the present, you're not doing that well. So the present can be lousy. Sometimes it's really not that good. So you have to be able to put your mind someplace where things used to be better, or where you're anticipating that things are going to be better. And Reb Nosson calls this borrowing from the past or borrowing from the future. And he says it's like a person who's lost his sight. So he has an option. Like he right now he's in the dark. But he has a stick. He can lean on his stick and find his way with the stick, or he can lean on another person. But he has something upon which he can depend if he chooses to do so that he can navigate through the darkness that he's in right now, even though on his own he'd be stuck. So we say he has to find something, some purchase upon which he can depend, and that's called borrowing from the past or borrowing from the future. How do you borrow from the past? Well, this chapter is all about. I go back in my mind to glorious moments in the history of the Jewish people where we were in such a bad state, like we think about the Exodus, and the Jewish people were in a terrible condition. And nevertheless, he did wonders for us. And so I can go back there and rejoice and feel it, even though I'm in my exile now. We're going to sit Pesach, we're going to sit Leila Seder at the Seder table, and we're going to immerse ourselves in the experience of the Exodus, even though we are still currently in exile. And we have reminders throughout the Seder that we're still in exile. You just have to eat that korech, the sandwich, the Hillel sandwich, yeah. So that Hillel sandwich, like, it's missing the main thing, it's have the Korban Pesach in there, and it hasn't got it. You've got your matzah and you've got your maror, and maybe you have a little charosis in there if that's what you do, but you're missing the meat. You're missing the main event. And that's because we still don't have a Beit HaMikdash. So even though we're immersing ourselves in the experience of redemption, it's a borrowing from the past in order to maintain ourselves in the present. And that's what Asaf is telling us to do. He's sharing with us his own process, which helps us sing our nigun in the night. So he's talked about how it is during the day, and then he talks about how much worse it is at night, right? During the day, you can seek out God. At night, you're like lying there in the bed, really feeling alone. And here comes the decision to immerse himself or borrow from the past, immerse himself in the memory. As Kirani Ginati Balayla, I'm going to go back in my mind to the Yamim Mikedem, Shnot Olamim, to the ancient days, and this brings me in my mind, in my memory, to nigun, to a place of song, which is not a lament. It's a nigun, it's like a spontaneous song that comes out of me, just like the tza'aka was a cry from the heart that has no words because it's so much pain and it can't even take a form in words. And here we have a nigun, which is a melody of hope and connection and uplift, which also doesn't assume any words. And I do this dafka balayla, through the night, through the hard part. Im levavi asicha, I start to have conversations with my heart, right? V'yechapes ruchi, and I start seeking or searching out my ruach. Talk about seeking out the ruach, Reb Nosson explains, because my ruach is really like, that's my tzaddik part in me. I don't want to be enshrouded. Titif ruchi we had earlier, this idea of like feeling enshrouded by the ruach, and that's the ruach in a very downcast state. But actually, my ruach is like the wind. It's very labile. It can move and it can change quickly, and so it's not like my nefesh, which is very grounded. My ruach is like air and it flows, and so now I go seeking it. It means to say I want to connect with the higher part of myself, and I can, because I've decided to sing this song and try and bring myself to a better state. So we are asking rhetorical questions. And they're not really rhetorical questions, because this is a prayer, so we're asking them of Hashem. When I say these words, they strike me always very, very powerful. It's a tefillah. Will my master, again, it's not Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's mastery, which is a language of din. Will he forever abandon me? V'lo yosif lirtzot od, can I never appease him? Will he never be appeased? So these are rhetorical questions that are not rhetorical questions, because even though they sound rhetorical, what they are tefillot. I'm turning to Hashem and saying, what? I've done so wrong that you can't ever be appeased? Will you always leave me in this state? He'afes lenetzach chesdo? Is God's loving kindness to be made as nothing, nullified into efes forever? Gamar omer ledor vador, what does he, like, does he absolutely decree the end, like a, cease and desist and no more for you? Generation upon generation. Here we are in this exile for 2,000 years, and we go through on the personal level whatever we have to go through, and it's like, Ribono shel olam, how long can it go on? I mean, whatever we've done, whatever I've done, is it that bad that you'll never reconcile with me? There's a beautiful song in Yiddish, which I wasn't even thinking I was going to sing to you, but it's a very beautiful old song, and sometimes I find myself singing it. It's just reminding me of it now because these words are very similar. It says, Lama zechi bebeitin, avinu, avinu sheba shamayim. Like, let us reconcile. Lama zechi bebeitin. Let's make it up. Ribono shel olam. Avinu sheba shamayim, our Father in heaven. Lama zechi bebeitin, avinu sheba shamayim. Father in heaven, like, let's reconcile. So those are what these questions are meant to fill us with, a kind of hope for eventual reconciliation. Hashachach chanot kel is the compassion of the force. That's kel, means the all-powerful one. Has it been forgotten? In kafatz ba'af rachamav sela, like, has he entirely closed off the channels of his mercy, rush, because of his great anger? Selah, God forbid, like as if it's all done? No. So all these questions, like this, we have here, really, it's several psukim. We have 3 psukim of questions that we kind of throw out to the Ribono Shel Olam. We throw them out to Hashem in a very open-hearted way of, they come from the place, just like Keli Lama Zaftani, those kinds of questions. My God, why have you forsaken me? They rest on there's an underpinning there. There's an underlying faith that He is merciful and that He doesn't abandon. Because, the one who's cool and who just walks out the door and slams it behind them, it's like, and they're saying, why have you forsaken me? Like, but the implication is of come back, unless you're a masochist and you just want to like torture yourself. But if the person is cruel and they've walked out and they're not coming back, so then what's the point of asking the question? You ask the question because you still have a place in your heart where you say, I know if I ask, it's going to return to me. And so we have here this idea of asking these questions because we really do assume that there is a response. Now, Asaf, at this point in the chapter, he's reflecting, meaning after all these questions, it's sort of like, okay, I keep asking, like, are his mercies really closed up? Is his chesed to be denied forever? And obviously the question underneath that is, well, but I know he's a benevolent God, so why am I being treated this way? If God is, and He is, the assumption of faith is that He is benevolent. So if He's benevolent, not if, He is benevolent, so therefore why am I in this place? Va'omar, and here we have, like, it's very decisive. Asaf says, and so I came to a conclusion. Chalotihi, the reason why the Jewish people, he means the Jewish people as a whole, are still in the state of exile is chaloti, is because of a kind of self-profanation or self-desecration. It's from the language of chilul. It's something I have done something to myself, and because of that, this is the response. But it's not because He wants to be this way with me, Hashem. He wants me to come out of the place where I have erred, and so I need to reflect on it. Chalotihi shnot yamin elyon. It's not that God, shnot here does not mean years. Shnot here means the shanot. It means to change something. And here we are back to the hand. Yeah? I said the hand keeps coming back up, right? V'amar chalotihi shnot yamin elyon. It's one long phrase. It is my own self-desecration that has caused a change in the way God's right hand has been, the High One's right hand has been dealing with me. Our association with the right hand is one of salvation and chesed. Every time it comes up, bizroa, Yamin Hashem Romema, Yamin Hashem Osechayil, we have good associations, positive associations with the Yad Hashem, with the hand. And we see that this chapter starts off with the Yedutun. It's like, I feel it's like I'm under such a heavy din, such a heavy judgment from the divine hand. So here, right in the middle point of the chapter, Asaf says, 1 second, is it that he's changed? God changes? Ani Hashem lo shiniti. I don't change. Benevolent God is benevolent God. So why is He treating me? Why does He treat this way? Because we have stuff that we need to fix within ourselves. Now we go back here. He's back again, immersed in the memories, because he's thinking about that right hand and its associations in the past, in our Jewish, our deep, deep Jewish associations with that right hand of power and intervention and chesed and strength. And so And so he wants to like recontact this right hand, the Yamin Elyon. As Kor Malaleya, I go back to think about the powerful actions of the Creator. Ki ezkira mikedem pilecha. I've chosen to go back to my ancient memories of your wonders. Now we talk about his pla'im, his wonders, your wonders, Hashem. And you see, look at that. We were talking about God. Until now, everything is about in the third person. And all of a sudden, what happens? We hit the truly like immersing ourselves in the past, the glorious past, and suddenly we're talking directly to God. He's not out of the room. He hasn't gone away. He's right here. Start contemplating and cogitating and speaking about all of your wondrous deeds, Hashem. Alilotecha means not only your actions, it's like your plans. And Alilah is the orchestration of events or the working out of cause and effect that's guided by the divine hand. And I want to talk about it. And I start talking about it, reminding myself of it. Elokim, bakodesh darkecha. Your way, Hashem, is in Kodesh. Now, Kodesh implies distinctly holy, separate from all avla, completely distinct and separate from anything that's improper or incorrect. Mi kel gadol kelokim. And when we get to this point already, it's like Asaf is already, we can feel him, and in ourselves when saying Tikkun HaKlali, we have the opportunity. It starts to become very powerfully strengthening. Mi kel gadol kelokim. Who is the great and powerful God like our God? Ata. You see how we're going back to the direct address? Ata hakelo sefele. It's you, mighty God, that does the pele. The pele means the thing that is the supernatural thing, the thing that is distinct. Pele means lahafli, is from the language of something being so different from natural order of things. So we say, Ata hakelo sefele. Hashem, you are absolutely unbounded in your might, and you are the creator and orchestrator of all, and because of that, you can do whatever you want. That's the pele. Hodata va'amim uzecha. You made it known to the nations of the world your power. Now, the idea of your power being obviously through the events, he's hearkening back to the events of the Exodus, the splitting of the sea, some huge events that are meant to that were meant to be transformative for the Jewish people, but also that were meant to leave an impression on the world. That's called Hodata va'amim uzecha. It didn't just affect us; it affected the entirety of the world. Here we are back to the hand, and now we talk about the zroah, which is not just the hand, but also the fullness of the arm. It means with power, with loving and helpful intervention. Hashem, you redeemed us. Bnei Yaakov v'Yosef Sela. Now this is important because Asaf has identified the reason why we are still in the exile and why we suffer, because that's what the chapter is about, is because we have drifted away, either as individuals or as a people, from being Bnei Yaakov v'Yosef. Now, if you're a Ben Yosef, right, not all of the Jewish people are children of Yosef. Or are they? What does it mean to be a Ben? Is it only the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh that are called the Bnei Yosef? Is it just the children, the tribes that come from the family line of Rachel that are called Bnei Yosef? No. We see the entirety of the Jewish people in some ways called Bnei Yosef also. Why? Bnei Yaakov are the tribes in their place of cohesive holiness. And that is one pathway of the Jewish people. We'll call it like the spiritual integrity of the Jewish people under good conditions. That's called being a Ben Yaakov. And we say Yosef, he's a different story. Yosef went down to Egypt. He had his Ephraim and Manasseh down in Egypt. When you're a Ben Yosef, you're the kind of person who can go into exile, the Jew who can go into exile and still maintain your spiritual integrity. That's a Yosef. She's called Yosef HaTzadik, Yosef the righteous. So we're not really talking about family lines here. We're talking about maintaining the purity of our ancestral tradition and allegiance to Hashem under all circumstances. Whether we are in our native place and we have conditions, we are living under conditions that are conducive, or whether we are in exile and living under conditions that are not conducive, whether we are in a physically depleted state or whether we are in a physically abundant state. It doesn't make a difference. So the psalmist, Asaf, he tells us, he's telling himself, in what merit did we like come to receive all of this wondrous divine intervention and saw only the benevolent and kind and loving face of the Creator? It was because we were maintaining our tradition of being Bnei Yaakov Yosef Sela. And when he ends off Sela, it means like, you know, put that in your pipe and smoke it. It means like, you know, this is a solid message you must maintain a connection to. Don't forget it. Ra'u chamayim elokim. Now, of course, we're speaking about the splitting of the sea. Chamayim elokim. Hashem, the seas saw you. The sea saw God. The waters saw God and they split. No, they saw the glory of the Jewish people. Really, what they saw were the bones of Yosef. But okay, it means they saw the glory of the Jewish people carrying out their allegiance and their pact with Hashem, and so bold what they saw and caused them to split. They went into a state of tumult. They like were terrified when they saw this. Hashem means to say they became completely willing to do whatever, even if it's the most unnatural thing to split. The water shouldn't be splitting, they should be flowing. Nevertheless, Yachilu, Af Yergizu Tohamot, the abyss was in a state of uproar. Zormu Mayim Avot, the clouds started to stream water. Kol Natnu Shchakim, the heavens were in a state of they made thunderous noise. Af Chatzatzecha Yitalachu, your arrows were going out to long distances. The chatzatzecha implies chitzim, but also chatzatzecha is like there's so many of them. They're like if you took a hand of gravel and you threw it out into the void. So it would be like one fistful of gravel could have like 500 little bits in it. So it's sort of like flung outward. The arrows. And what does it mean? What arrows? What are God's arrows? Like now we're already remembering the events of the splitting of the sea and the downfall of the Egyptian army. So we have all of these big references to the deep historic antecedents of the Jewish people and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to our rescue. And obviously this is the overturning of the lamenting at the beginning, which is from such a state of near hopelessness, right? And here Asaph, in only 15 verses later, already you can feel the impending triumph because he's figured out where the problem is. That's the transformation of the kinah to the nigun, the kinah to the tikkun. It's not, the problem is not that we have erred. The problem is that we are in a state of unconsciousness of our responsibility or our participation in our own exile, personal and collective. As soon as we become aware of our agency, that's really what it's about, right? That's if you want to say the turnover, really where things start to flip, is over here, right? Is chalotihi shnoton. That's really where, right there in the middle of the chapter, is where Asaph comes to recognition of our agency. The implication of that is, look, if the problem is due to your actions, then it means that the solution is also in your hands. That's how everything starts to flip over in the chapter. Kol Ram Chab Galgal. So it's like now we're hearing thunder, right? The waters are in an uproar. It's like water is streaming from the heavens. There's thunder. There are, it's like there's earthquakes. Who knows what's going? Kol Ram Chab Galgal. The thunder is begalgal. It means it's like rolling thunder through the. The sound of rolling thunder through the heavens. He'iri brakim tevel. The flashes of lightning are crossing the earth. Ragzava tira'ash haaretz. The earth is in a state of, it's like quaking. It's in a state of upheaval. So these 4 verses are a very physical and evocative description of what happens in the world when the Jewish people merit positive divine intervention. It's like there's no rules. The natural order of things doesn't matter, and everything is going to be altered and changed exactly in accordance with the divine will, provided that we are worthy of it. So those 3 verses are really like an overturning of all of the lockdown. Remember we said at the beginning, but Sarah, Asaph starts off from the place of feeling like he has no power, everything is so constricted. And here we say, no, it's like, if I'll just be in alignment with Hashem's will, so then power is unending. The power is there. The problem is that I'm not connected. So when I'm connected, the power becomes available. Bayam darkecha, your pathway, Hashem, goes through the sea. Ushvilcha b'mayim rabim, and your channels, your pathways go through many waters. V'ikvotecha lo nodau, and your footsteps are not known. That means to say, when we talk about his pathways, his way, his road, his footsteps, means the way of hashgacha, the pathways of providence. They go wherever they need to go, whether it's through the sea, and we have this image of like, lahavdil, like the 20,000 league boots, right? It's like he goes wherever he needs to go. He does whatever he needs to do. There is no obstacle. You can't walk through the water, but Kadosh Baruch Hu can allow you to walk through the water. Ikvosecha lo nodau, and your footsteps are not known. Nachita katzon amecha, you have led your people like a flock of sheep. Biad Moshe v'Aaron, at the hands of the great tzaddikim Moshe and Aaron. So the finality of the chapter is that we return to the state of the flock being led by the shepherd lovingly with good agents to help us. And that's the closure here, meaning I'm no longer in the dark, and I'm no longer alone, and I'm no longer powerless, I'm no longer suffering. But I can look forward to the great and glorious future, like the great and glorious past that we already had. Now, just quickly, a couple of minutes. Some of the things that I wanted to tell you, I already told you. And there is a little bit of the Likutei Halachot that I would like to go on with. Now, some of it I've already told you in not so many words. The idea of the nighttime being the time of doing this active self-examination and clarification, having to do this work at night. So Rabbi Nachman does place a great emphasis on that, and that's actually from the Likutei Moharan in the lesson 54. So there is here, if anybody wants the source inside, but I'm just going to tell you where it is. We spoke about this idea of the efficacy of the prayers at night and chatzot, and specifically at night, and not being afraid of the night, but embracing this opportunity of coming out from the breakage of the night. So that's in Haneir Balayla, which is lesson 54, if anybody's interested in looking there. But I basically told you what I had wanted to say from outside. And let's see. I think I pretty much told you what I had intended to tell you from the Likutei Halachot. And let's see. Hodat v'ami muzecha. It's too much to do now. It's enough. I think we've touched upon things. It's enough. I mean, and also for anybody who's familiar with Rabbi Nachman's lessons. So if you want to understand the idea of the path of God through the waters, so that's really in lesson 6 of Likutei Moharan, where he speaks about Hanoten Bayam Darech, but it's too much to add into now after we did the chapter. And I hope it's been useful and beneficial. Katie, if you want it's from a few different sections in Likutei Halachot, so if you want me to send you the document, if anybody wants it, so they can look at it at their own leisure, so send me an email, through the course page or whatever it is. There's a way of getting in touch with if you don't have my email address. And I will gladly send you more source material if you have the ability to do it inside. But basically everything that I want to say, I said. There's only so much you can do in an hour. We're fortunate that we're able to cover a full chapter. That's requires a miracle. Okay. Have a good week. Misha Nechnas Adar, Marbim B'Simcha. We should have beautiful, beautiful month of Adar and everything good and no tzara, only harvacha, only ease. La Yudim Haisa Or B'Simcha B'Sasim B'Ikar. We should have only delight, and the joy for everybody. Okay? Have a beautiful week.